Today we're going to be talking about how to winterize your engine for a long storage on the off season. Stick around. Welcome back to our maintenance program. Today we're talking about putting your engine in storage. The things that I do to prevent the rust and corrosion from sitting over the winter. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all the spark plug wires off, and I'm going to pull all the spark plugs. Now is when I kind of get an idea of how we finished off the season. These plugs have 10 nights on them. Over the last 10 nights, it looks like they were all burning good. We don't have the electrode burned off. The ground strap looks like it's nice and square yet, so we know that the tune was right on the engine. Now, once I have all the plugs out of the engine, I'll go through and I'll make sure that the fuel cell is all drained, the fuel line's drained, the fuel pump's drained, the carburetor's drained. After that's all drained, I'll take a good fogging oil, whether it be a Sta-Bil or like a good penetrating oil, something that can get in there and it's safe on all the surfaces, and it's going to prevent the rust, the corrosion, keep the moisture out. So then basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fogging agent and I'm going to come in every spark plug hole, and I'm going to spray every spark plug hole. I'm going to open up the ventries in my carburetor. I'm going to spray down my ventries in my carburetor just to get it in all the ports. And then with no plugs in the engine, I'm going to just take it, I'm going to spin it over quick. What that does is it makes sure all the cylinder walls and all the valves are coated. Then I'll actually go back through and I'll give one more shot to each one of the spark plug holes, and that's going to ensure that I got good protection on every cylinder. Now is the time, if you're going to send off your carburetor, pull your carburetor off, put a good cap on your intake, and box up your carburetor nice. Send it off to your carb guy, whatever you're going to do if you're going to have it freshened up. This carburetor is pretty fresh, so we're not worried about that. I'll go over and how I winterize this thing. I'll turn you guys so you guys can see the carburetor a little bit better. So now what I'm going to do to winterize this is I get a good penetrating oil that I know is safe for all the materials that are in my carburetor. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two vent tubes and I'm actually going to fill them up. You're going to go until they foam over, and that's going to get the penetrating oil in the bowl. It's going to keep the gaskets in the bowl from drying out. It's going to keep your diaphragms on your accelerator pump from drying out, and it's going to give you some protection against the moisture and any corrosion that you could have going on depending on what fuels you use. Then I'll come back through, and on every air bleed, I'm just going to spray down the air bleeds, and that's going to push out any moisture that could be in there, as well as protecting it from any moisture from getting in. Now after I do that, I'll actually go through, and where the throttle shafts come through the carburetor, if you look in both ventries down at the butterfly, you'll see actually where the shaft comes through the carburetor. I'm going to just take the nozzle, and I'm going to, lost my socket, and I'm going to actually spray in there, and that's just going to give me a little bit more protection, and it's going to also help lube those shafts, but that'll keep us from having any moisture come in. So then after I go through and I winterize my carburetor, you want to get yourself a nice hard aluminum cap, not one that's going to deflect in when you go to tighten it up. And then I just go and I'll tighten this down, and I'll make sure that no moisture or anything gets in my carburetor, no dust. It's all going to be sealed off, and then it'll be ready to go for me in the spring. In the spring, I'll just take whatever fuel I'm using, and I'll fill up my float bowls, and I'll run it, and I'll get rid of all that penetrating oil that's in there. That's not going to hurt nothing. After I get this done, I'll take my fitting off of my fuel pump on the gear pumps. On a diaphragm pump, you can put a little bit of oil in there, but I wouldn't get carried away. Some of them diaphragms are a little bit more finicky than the seals that are in a carburetor. But on like a gear pump, I'll do the same thing. I will lube up that gear pump just to make sure that the gears aren't sitting there dry and that there's no corrosion that can happen over the winter. So that's been a brief overview on how I winterize my engines. Open motor guys, talk to your engine builder as far as the valve springs. If they want you back off the valve springs, if you have fairly fresh valve springs, maybe talk to them about backing off the rockers to save those valve springs. That way you're not putting a lot of nose pressure on them while it just sits. Uh, Luckily anymore, we have enough racing going on in the fall and early in the spring. The off time isn't as much as it used to be to where it actually put a set to those valve springs. Like I said, being this is a crate, I'm going to put new valve springs in it in the spring. I'm not too worried about that. We'll start off the year with new valve springs. If you guys are finding value in this series, hit the subscribe button down below. I plan on doing a lot more of these videos, so if you guys want, keep following along. You guys have yourself a good day.